All right, so we're going to go through the ability to render your stuff in different layers inside of Cinema. So this is like what a rendering would look like. I've given some generic color to my environment in this case, just so we can see it. Um, Let me jump out of my camera for a second, just so we can see like what this looks like. So it looks like that, and I just kind of put this other obstacle here just so you can see what that looks like. But obviously, you may not be framing your stuff. Now, this specific process is going to be set up in a way for still cameras, right? So that would be the idea. It'll save you time on your rendering if you can, cut out some render time when you're actually doing still camera moves, right? So the camera is actually not moving itself. So I'm just kind of getting this into position, kind of framing the shot, maybe rotating this down a bit more. There we go. All right, so now we can see like the monarch, and we can see these things. When we do our render in Redshift, this is everything. And when everything's in there, obviously this it's taking about 11 seconds, which obviously might seem like a long time, or not a long time. But when you up the settings in Redshift and then you're actually going through and doing your animation, that could add up pretty quick. So you'll see like these pieces kind of flying into scene like that. And this doesn't even have motion blur on yet. So like if I go into my render settings and turn motion blur on, let's go to a spot where we can see some movement happening. Okay, this is going to make the rendering take even longer. It might not be a whole lot of time. I guess it's about the same, 11 seconds still for that. But again, my settings are not, high up at the moment, right? We're still at a low resolution currently. So 11 seconds is fine. But what if we could just render out, like this stuff here doesn't really move. Like there might be shadows on it and stuff, but how important is it in this case? We can render out the environment pieces, and then anything that's actually moving, we could render that separately, and then we can put those two things together. Okay, so that's the idea of this. So I have this scene here, so I'm just going to save this as. I'm just going to call this one. I'm going to say everything is the name of this one. Okay, and I'm just going to go to like frame 1 before I have anything in here. And I'll just do like a render of this. Just a quick, oops, wrong button. Just a quick render just so we can get an image. Okay, so this is like the environment, right? And I do have my alpha channel is also turned on. So if you don't know how to do that, under output, under save, I've just clicked this alpha channel button here. Right. So that gives me this alpha channel. I do have an emission pass too, which I'm not currently using, so this is really just null and void, but this is what it looks like, just a still image, right? So I'm just going to save this image as, and I'll save it to here with the alpha channel. Let's say layers too. I always like to click that. And it's the same settings as I had set up in my render view, so let's just go into logo design. Let's make a new folder for images, and this is everything. Okay, now I'm gonna save the scene as another name here, so this is going to be logo only. There we go. And so this one I want to render just the logo. Okay, now as I could just come into like, this is the group of everything else. I just have like the group of the environment here, and my logo is right there. So I could take the group and just turn this off and then render it. But what's going to happen is it's obviously like right now it's blank. Let's go to where we can see the logo coming in. Right, so let's say right there. And just so I can kind of get a visual for this real quick. There we go. So I want to make sure like I can see the Macomb stuff there. So Let's turn off the rendering and the visibility for this group. Let's render again. And what we're going to see is that the Macomb logo here that's lower down, it's not being cut off, right? So if I were to put this on top of the other one, what would happen is that this would just be on top of it, right? So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go into After Effects. I'm going to go to my project area and just double click. Let's go and find 2510 logo images. Here is the original one. So I'm just going to say pre-multiplied. Okay, that applies the alpha channel. And then I can drop this onto the new comp button. And if I click on my alpha channel transparency, we should see that we have transparency. Yep, so that worked. Let's go here. Let's save this one as, we'll do the same thing, layers, yes, hit OK. And this is just logo test, right? And I'm going to double click, bring in the logo test, import, pre-multiplied again, drop this on top of there, and you'll see this, right? So this should actually be behind this box, right? Now I could, draw masks around these pieces, but then I'm drawing masks around them, and, like, let's just do a quick one, just this. And then we'll go to the mask, and we will say subtract. There we go. So like that works, but then obviously like my mask is off, so now I have to fix it, right? And the more complex of a shape you would have in front of something, obviously the more time you have to spend like drawing the mask, and it's a hassle. So there's ways we can do this inside of Cinema that would actually like cut out those pieces for us. So the way I'm going to do it is on this group here. I'm going to go to tags and rendering. There we go. And redshift object. And this will create this thing here, this redshift object. And under matte, I'm going to say override and enabled. And I'm going to take the alpha and pull that off. Okay, so let's render this again. Okay, so now we're still seeing that same thing. We have to set up something else. Where was the other piece? I forgot I turned these things off, so let's turn that back on. So now when we render, what we should get on this alpha channel is it should be cut out, right? It's still showing like the background there, but now look, it already made a mask for us. So it still has this, but now it's cut off. So let's just do a little test. Let's save that. Here's our new logo test. And because After Effects does linking, I should be able to go here. Let's delete this mask. And you'll see that it sits perfectly inside there, right? So there's no mask actually on this anymore. It read the new mask in here. You can see if I double click, it'll actually show it being cut off right there. And so now when I render this, I don't need to render out the entire animation for all of the stuff. I could render out just this environment here as one piece, and then my animation, which is, the lion stuff moving around. And then when I put those two things together, then it will just match perfectly, as long as the camera, again, doesn't move for this setup. You could do the same process where you do have the camera moving, but then there's a disadvantage where you're kind of like rendering things twice, so now it might even take longer to render things out, right? Just this one frame took 8 seconds, so definitely less time than 11 seconds, and again, our settings are not up to crazy amounts. But then I would just set this up in my render view. I would say, okay, well, I'm going to do my save. In this case, they're just regular images, right? So let's do logo animation. Let's do solo logo animation. Let's get rid of the underscore. We don't need multipass, because there's no multipass in this case. I am doing TIFFs. I'm going to do name.number.extension. Okay, you would up your settings. I'm just going to keep them low for right now. I'm going to leave motion blur on just for this thing here. Okay, and then I'm just going to render this just so you can see like that process of what it's going to look like at the end. I also need to go. I said render a sequence, but I never told you which frames. I need all those frames. Thank you. There we go. Now I'm going to hit the render button and just so you can see, like, while this is going, like, the first 10 frames, like, there's nothing happening here. So these frames are actually taking, like, considerably less amount of time. 6 seconds in this case, and then 10, and then whatever. So it's actually going, relatively quick because there's nothing happening at the start of this. Where if we were rendering the environment to, those frames would be rendering the environment just blank, doing nothing at those points, right? And this also applies to, like, if the environment itself is moving, right? So, like, not only the camera, don't stop that. Make sure I didn't stop this picture viewer. Yep, there we go. If the environment items are moving too, like, this would also apply, like, that animation wouldn't come through. Now, you might have an instance too where maybe you're animating, let's scoot this out. Maybe you're animating the background pieces and you do want to render those separately because maybe you just don't know the timing of those. And so you want to, like, render out these pieces as one chunk and then these pieces as another chunk. You could do that too. So I've only broken this into 2 separate groups, like logo is the main stuff I'm rendering and group is the secondary stuff, right? That's kind of my mask. But you could render out all of these pieces separately. I could render out this background thing as one, render out this as another one, render out this as another one, right? So, like, you could do a whole bunch of stuff like that if you really got into layering. And when you get into, like, the Hollywood movie stuff, or even automotive, commercial work, like all that, like, they do that all the time. On top of doing, like, multi-pass stuff for render layer compositing. All right, enough talking. I'll let it just chug along, and then we'll come back when it's done. All right, it's just about finished, and we're looking at about total render time for 90 frames, around 10 minutes. So not too bad. Let that last frame finish. Yep, so 10 minutes and 25 seconds. So let's go into After Effects. We'll delete our logo test. Yep. Let's double click. Let's grab one of the images. Make sure we have our sequence. Pre-multiply the alpha. Let's drop it on top of this. And obviously, like, the still image went, 12 seconds. I go to the end of this and hit N. And then just hit play. And we'll see this coming in. And again, this is all, like, one color here. You could have multiple colors in all of these other pieces. This is just for the demo. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand just the process of being able to render stuff in layers. So that way, if you wanted to keep things separate like that, you definitely could. And if you didn't even have, like, obviously this has more stuff. Let me save this as, I have so many saves in here. Let's make sure it's saved with that one first. There we go. And let's go here. Nomad. If my camera is in a spot where none of the stuff that's animated is even going to be, like, in the way of something. So, like, let's say I'm just doing it right there where all these pieces are coming in like this, where the logos and nothing is, like, being obstructed by these. You don't even need to set up that mat here, because all the stuff is just going to be in front of it anyway. You still need the alpha channel so that you render transparency and you can have those pieces move, but you don't need to have all the other stuff here. This is always just good to have, so that way it's kind of separated from those pieces. So hope that helps. If you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out and let me know. Good luck.